So welcome everybody, I'm Trevor Hancock. This is Conversations for a One Planet region for March 25th, 2021. And our topic for the conversation today is Circles and Doughnuts, creating an economy fit for the 21st century, a local economy fit for the 21st century. And I just want to make a couple of quick opening comments about the sort of framework for all of this. So the framework is that, if you like, it's the notion of a well-being budget. And we can look to New Zealand, which pleasingly is about the same size as BC, and see that a country like that, Aotearoa New Zealand, can commit to a well-being budget. And they did so, in fact, more than a couple of years ago now. They want to make well-being a focus to drive the decisions we make about government. And so this is the framework that they are using for their budgeting. And I think that the key thing here is to point out that this is not a budget simply any longer about financial and physical capital, about economics in the conventional sense, but they are looking at natural capital and social capital and human capital in addition to financial and physical capital, and are looking at how do you treat all four of these as assets that generate well-being. And on the right, you will see they have a set of 12 domains of current well-being, which is better shown in this slide here. And so this is very similar, if you're familiar with the work, to the Canadian Index of Wellbeing, which has been developed here in Canada and is now housed at Waterloo University, but has been around for, 20 years, I would think, getting on for at this point. But very similar sets of domains in terms of what are the things that matter if we're trying to create a well-being economy. And so it is in that broad context that that we want to have our conversation. Note that in their priorities in New Zealand, they're talking about creating opportunities in iwi. Iwi is what we would call First Nations. They're talking about thriving in the digital age, lifting Maori and Pacific income, so a very strong focus on economics with respect to Indigenous people, and then reducing child poverty and supporting mental well-being. So when you start to take a well-being approach to your budget, you end up with some somewhat different budget priorities than perhaps we would normally get. So it's in that context that I want to then turn to our speakers. And first we have Jill Doucette, founder and CEO of the Synergy Institute, where among other things, they house the Project Zero Circular Economy project. And so Jill is going to talk about circular economy and anything else she chooses to talk about for that matter. Jill, over to you.
Thank you, Trevor, and hello, everyone. It's great to be here this evening and talk about circles and donuts, two of my favorite things at work these days, and great to have Ben here as well. I think our presentations will fit really well together because the circular economy is really one piece that can enable the donut economics model. So how we got started in the circular economy, this was actually brought to our attention by our board. And they said, you know, the circular economy ticks so many boxes for us, this concept, this kind of unknown, nebulous concept, as it was at the time. They said, you know, it can help create jobs, it can help turn waste into a resource, reduce emissions, reduce pollution. It goes on and on. You know, the circular economy just makes so much sense. But of course, at the Synergy Foundation, we needed to ground truth this in some real businesses and some real initiatives, because that's what we focus on. So I'm going to share just a quick presentation to give you some examples of the incredible innovation that we have here on Vancouver Island in the circular economy, and a little bit about what it is in general. Okay. So under the Synergy Foundation, we do have a number of programs. Some you might be familiar with. You may see the decals of the green businesses that we certify through the Vancouver Island Green Business Collective. And we also run our urban agriculture program called the Food Eco District, or FED. But the one I'll focus on today is Project Zero. So why Project Zero? Obviously, the positive environmental impact of the circular economy, the opportunity to reduce our carbon emissions. Drives me a little crazy that we import all of our goods and export all of our waste. That's a broken system economically and environmentally that we can solve by looking at things through a circular lens. And what's really exciting for us is the ability to drive innovation, create new entrepreneurial opportunities and jobs. Especially now that we're in a mode of economic recovery, this couldn't be any more important. So we decided to run a incubator program, and you can learn all about our ventures on the Project Zero website if you want to see some of the examples. But we've helped launch a number of companies. We're now starting cohort 3, so we're in our 3rd year of this incubator program. And this is really what inspires us, is the entrepreneurs with a wild idea that we kind of help them turn into a real business. We have a number of other initiatives, such as helping First Nations implement broader recycling programs and circular economy strategies, et cetera. But diving into our model, we really look at how to change this broken system that I mentioned. The linear economy, take, make, waste. Every step in this has a cost, environmentally and economically. And by rethinking this model, we can change how our whole economy is designed. So like I said, we import our goods, we end up with everything it was packaged in, or maybe goods that only last us a short amount of time, and then we have to pay to get rid of them, send them overseas. And one thing that really enabled the green economy or the circular economy movement was the Green Sword Initiative in China, where they said, we actually don't want your waste anymore. So we ended up kind of getting stuck with our waste, which was a good thing, because now we have to actually figure out how to deal with it here in our own communities. And that drives innovation. So when we look at a circular economy model, what we're looking at is instead of this take, make, waste, we're looking at ways through all of those steps to circulate the materials back into production. And that whole process being powered by renewable energy. So what that might look like is starting with reducing our waste in our personal lives and at work, focusing on reuse and repair. When you're done with a good, looking at redistribution. So you could think of Habitat for Humanity's Restore there. When the good is definitely at the end of its life, we can look at reconditioning. You can think of electronics, repairing a broken screen. And when really that good has no more value, we can recycle it into its components and turn it into new products. So that's how we would break that down. We know right now that our world is only 9% circular. So if we take all of our recycling initiatives globally, we're actually only taking care of about 9% of our goods. There's certain things like aluminum, that are infinitely recyclable, copper, things like that, if we collect it properly. But most of our goods that we make are destined to end up in the environment in some form at the end of their life. So we have a 91% gap to fill, and this is going to take some time. But it starts with innovation in our own communities. We also know that the circular economy is a huge economic recovery opportunity, and there's been all kinds of reports, presented at Davos and the World Economic Forum saying this could actually unlock a lot of revenue for our communities and for our countries if we rethink waste. So just to give a few examples, in Reduce, of course, like I mentioned, we can focus on reducing our waste at home. So I do think within the circular economy, there is so much that we can do as individuals, and that's what's quite exciting about it. Obviously, looking at what we purchase in packaging and changing our own purchasing habits is contributing to the circular economy. A couple of the businesses that we work with here in our local community contribute to that reduced portion. Nula is a graduate from our incubator program that is a reusable cup share program. So you can pay a deposit at one coffee shop and drop it off at another. It's a really great program. We also work with companies like the Zero Waste Emporium, who are offering produce zero waste. And the more we support these companies, the more this just becomes the norm in how we shop. Under reuse and repair, looking at purchasing products that are designed for repairability. And this can be challenging. And this is where, there is a bit of, government support needed in the right to repair movement. But when we purchase goods, having that circular economy lens in mind, what will I do with this when it's done? Is it recyclable? Is it repairable? Does it have a warranty? If I pay a little bit extra, can I make this good last 10 more years? Another graduate from our incubator program is called Basecamp Repairs, and they specialize in repairing outdoor goods that we damage because we're out having fun in the wilderness or whatever we're up to. So they do tent repairs, specialized gear repairs, your down jacket that gets a rip in it. So this is a new company that will be able to service warranties as well for companies like Patagonia and MEC. Because if there isn't a company that has the technical skills to issue those warranties, they will simply give you a new product because there's no one local to repair it. So this will be a new specialized company to repair our goods and make them last longer. Under redistribution, this is an age-old model. Think of your thrift store and being able to redistribute things. But we can also think of tool libraries and bike shares and other ways that perhaps we don't need to own the good, but we can collectively share certain goods. This also contributes to broader affordability and lighter living in general. You've probably heard some stats about the incredible amount of food waste we have as a major challenge across the world, but especially in developed nations. There's some incredible programs for food redistribution to those who need it, coming from grocery stores, coming from restaurants. Ben, I know in your community in Nanaimo, you have an incredible nonprofit that's focused on this. So, being able to support these nonprofits and reduce our own food waste at home is huge. So under reconditioning, this is where, we're taking a good and turning it into something else. So one example is a graduate from our program called Ergo, and they're based in Cowichan, and they take waste fryer oil and turn it into biodiesel. And you can actually take your car, and if you have a diesel vehicle, you can fill up on biodiesel made from fryer oil. And it is as high quality diesel as the diesel you will get in a gas station. So again, there's so many things that we can do as individuals to support the circular economy. It's just finding these gems of organizations and businesses out there and knowing that they exist as an option for us. This is a picture of their pump. So you can get B20, B50, or B100. So either 20% biodiesel, 50 or 100% biodiesel. So you can even have a blend. And I just love their French fry diagrams on their pumps. It always makes me want to go to Big Wheel Burger after getting gas. So in their business plan that we help them with, they're also working on something called an oil alternative, which is a form release agent for the construction industry. So when you have a concrete form and you have your wood form, they spray that with diesel typically so that the concrete can be released from the form once you've built your foundation. So that diesel is going into our environment, and this is an alternative that is all plant-based. Things you don't think about, right? Another great company, this is based in Vancouver, but we helped them set up a location here in Victoria. They're called Chop Value, and they saw value in used soy sauce soaked chopsticks. Some of these folks are just so innovative. So they actually take the chopsticks, they collect them from restaurants, They press them with their kind of unique heat press system, and then they can turn it into any kind of product. And this is just an example, a little wall setup that they have that we purchased for our office. So again, any waste, if we, with a little bit of creativity, can become a new resource. Another example is waste linens from hotels. Hotels actually go through an incredible amount of linens, we discovered. So we worked with one of the businesses that graduated from our program and connected them and said, can you do anything with these linens? It's still, quality fabric. And their business is called Thread Lightly, based in Duncan. So she actually takes those products and turns them into, she takes waste coffee bags as well and turns them into backpacks. But with the linens, she turned them into this collection of produce bags that they now sell in restaurants for fruits and vegetables. In redistribution, you're looking at kind of taking waste back into the system. And another great example is Avalon Milk. Again, they've been around for a while, but if you purchase milk, here's a local company you can support where they actually recollect the bottles, clean them, and refill them instead of creating waste and contributing to your blue bin volume. So under the recycle category, we have lots of innovative companies here. And this is where, you typically need some machinery, you're deconstructing something and reconstructing it into something else. A great local company is Anion. They take wool from Italian suits and old wool blankets. They actually have it shredded and turn it into new textile. And this really high quality, durable textile that lasts decades. I mean, their products are really incredible. So this is a business, a local fashion company that has really taken circular economy to heart, and it's core to their business model. And they're right down on Johnson Street in Victoria. This is another one that I'm very excited about. We met the owner of Unbuilders, a founder in Vancouver, strongly encouraged him to come do his work in Victoria. He's since been on Dragon's Den and got a full sweep deal from the Dragons. Their company, instead of demolishing homes, they deconstruct them, and they're able to reuse about 97% of what they remove from that site. That wood, windows, framing, flooring, wiring, they're either recycled or they go to Habitat for Humanity and lumber stores to be redistributed into the system. Construction waste is one of the most significant contributors to waste in our local landfills. So the Unbuilders is a totally different model. And instead of paying somebody to come in with a big piece of machinery and tear down a building really quickly and haul it to the landfill, which is most of the cost of getting rid of your building, is the hauling to the landfill and paying those fees. Instead, that money that you would have paid to demo a home is spent on local labor to deconstruct that home, so you're also creating more jobs. I hope I don't have too many more examples here, because I know I've got to pass the mic over to Ben here soon, but I wanted to share this one as well. Flipside Plastics is one of the graduates from our program from Cohort 2, and they have an incredible model, and I want to share this one because I think it could be in every single community. So Precious Plastics is an international movement to take plastic, shred it down into what you can see here, a finer grain pellet or flake. And from there, you can turn it into anything. You can mold and use mold injection. You can use extruders to create 3D printing filament. So essentially, you can create local manufacturing hubs using common waste that would be in your blue bins. These planter pots are examples of something that could be created, but honestly, it is endless. You can you can press it into boards for park benches. You can do anything. And these facilities can be set up in 1,000 square feet. So really affordable way to start a business. You need a few small pieces of machinery. You need a consistent source of plastics, and you can make products and sell them. Really exciting business. Flipside Plastics is one starting in Victoria, but I know there's also one in Kelowna, and more starting throughout BC. So I think this will be a movement. These sort of microplastic recycling and manufacturing centers will become something that we see a lot more of. Okay, great. So I'm going to stop screen sharing now because I think that is enough examples, but I hope what that leaves you with is a sense of what the circular economy could really look like in practice, how our personal consumer behaviors could support the circular economy, and all of these wonderful businesses that are taking a chance, trying something new, putting it out there and hoping that it lands with us. And with the circular economy, I think there's lots of innovation. There's lots going on. We can do our part to support these businesses and help start new ones in our communities. But there definitely are a couple of challenges. For example, that whole right to repair movement, that is a bit of an impediment. But also, these businesses they generally have a hard time finding space. Some of them are technically light industrial businesses, and it's hard to find small light industrial spaces. So I put this out there in every group that I speak to about the circular economy because somebody's got to have a really cool building out there that could be chopped up into micro units and turned into, a hub for these kinds of businesses. But that is something that is definitely very much needed. Some of these businesses are operating out of apartments, garages, spaces that are technically not zoned for what they're doing because it's just really hard to find this space. So if we want to be able to take our waste and deal with it locally in a sustainable way, we've got to try to find some spaces that will help these businesses get off the ground. So that's my little pitch. And I hope that some of the examples that I shared will have inspired you. I know they definitely inspire me. So thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Jill. That was wonderful. And one of the things I like about this, one of the things we try and talk about in conversations is that although we're facing this massive challenge of trying to reduce our ecological footprint by about 70%, there is all sorts of hope out there and all sorts of opportunity. And that's what this highlights. And so thank you very much. I'm going to turn to Ben Gesselbracht, who, as I said, is a councillor for the city of Nanaimo and for the regional district, and has been championing a Doughnut economics framework. And I think, Ben, you're the first city or first municipality in the country to adopt a Doughnut economics framework. Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah. So we're being a bit exotic here and moving beyond the capital regional district, the Greater Victoria region, going all the way up to Nanaimo, which is a long way for us to go these days. Ben, welcome, and it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Trevor. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, my name is Ben Gesselbracht. I'm a city councillor in Nanaimo here, calling in from the traditional territories of the Nanaimo First Nations. And I'll just share my screen here. And how is that coming in for you? Are you seeing kind of a white...
We're seeing Coherence right now.
Okay, perfect.
There's just a title slide.
So we've been having a lot of fun with the donut model in Nanaimo just because of the prominence of the Nanaimo bar, but we're replacing it with a donut. And the whole conversation for us started off because we're updating our official community plan, and a few of us really interested in community development and planning. And there's a great writer, Jonathan F.P. Rose, who did a lot of planning for the city of New York and he really writes about the idea of coherence and having a very clear vision that's easily communicatable for the city and to organize your organization around. And that's when we can really start to bring together all these disparate elements and work efficiently towards the goals that we need to. And so, you know, with our environment committee, we really wanted to find a coherent framework for, you know, what we're trying to do. What are we trying to accomplish for our environment? And we also have a bunch of social challenges up here in Nanaimo, and struggling on communicating what we're trying to do with that. And it just so happened that the Doughnut model came up, and it was a really beautiful way of integrating sort of the vision and a framework for the environment that, you know, the circular economy touches on, but also bringing in social equity and the social foundation by which we need to take into account and organize around. So quite simply, this is what the donut looks like. And the model basically has an ecological ceiling. So can you see that the top ring of the donut? That ecological ceiling is made up of a series of planetary boundaries that can't be crossed. And that these planetary boundaries are elements that are required for the healthy functioning. They're essential ecosystem services. So there's such things as, you know, the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, ocean acidification, you know, the level of chemical pollution, fresh water, the amount of land that's been converted, the amount of biodiversity and air pollution, and that sets the limits that we've got to work within. And then at the inner ring of the donut is the social foundation, and these are things such as basic access to health, education, food, peace and justice, political voice, social equity, gender equality, housing. And these are the things that we all need to have a good life. And the model identified the planetary boundaries based on work in Europe of some researchers that identified what were the core ecological essential elements needed for sustaining life. And then the social foundation was developed by by Kate Raworth, who was informing the UN. Kate Raworth is the creator of Doughnut Economics, and that led to the development of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So the whole gist of it is that basically our economy and our communities have to operate within the planetary boundary of the environment limits and above the social foundation. And that's the sweet spot of the donut. And so people always joke or ask, like, why do you pick such an unhealthy thing, you know, for such an important framework? And you got to tell them that, you know, this is the one donut that's healthy for you. So here's an interesting diagram just basically on the per capita income of a few different countries. You got Malawi on the left there, and you can see the red is where a country is overshooting their particular boundary, and green is when they're working within. So Malawi is well within the ecological limits, but they're falling short of the social foundation. Whereas in these Western economies like Japan and Canada, you know, we are meeting our basic social needs, and not always, but for the most part, but are well overshooting the planetary boundaries. And so the whole gist is that the vision and goal of Doughnut Economics is to meet the needs of all within the means of the planet. And that is a very clear vision that is the direction. And you can sort of see here of this chart, basically you've got a whole set of countries that are falling short on the social foundations on the left here, and then the top right is you know, meeting those social foundations but overshooting the planetary limits. And Canada's right here. So Amsterdam did a lot of work on the circular economy and developed a really great circular economy framework. And we were talking with one of the leads who was developing that, a woman by the name of Electra. And when the donut model came out, they saw that it was really useful in layering over top this social equity lens on top of this framework. And so Amsterdam was the first city in the world to adopt the donut model. And you can see here by this chart how they're organizing all their city strategic planning and programs from that. So the process for a city when you adopt the donut is that the donut is a very broad scale global picture. And what you need to do is downscale it to the level of your city. So they call that downscaling the donut. And Amsterdam was the first city that went through this process. And they created a methodology called the city portrait model, the city portrait method. And this is what Nanaimo is going through. And I'm just going to, so the city portrait, when you're downscaling the donut, is asking the question in your city planning, and for our case in Nanaimo is, how can Nanaimo become a home to thriving people in a thriving place while respecting the well-being of all people and the health of the whole planet? So it's really bringing down those two concepts of local and global, social and ecological. And it creates a framework to start then investigating what would it mean for our city to thrive within our local natural habitat? What would it mean for the people of our city to thrive within our local region? What would it mean for Nanaimo to respect the health of the whole planet? And what would it mean for Nanaimo to respect the well-being of people worldwide? And so for us in Nanaimo engaging in this process, what we needed to do was ask these questions and then also build a metrics-based framework so that we can measure our progress. And so we needed to figure out just how there was metrics on the global level, like global greenhouse gas emissions or the amount of land converted, that you could see whether you're within the environmental limits or above it. We need to figure out what were some metrics that made sense towards our specific local situation. And so we had to do it over Zoom, but we had a big meeting on Zoom, and then we had this digital board that everybody go on and had a discussion on how are we going to measure our success. What does it mean for Nanaimo to operate inside the donut? And so we've come up with a few metrics, and the importance when you're adopting the donut is that one of the primary principles is changing the focus, changing the purpose of your organization. And at the national level, everything was measured around gross domestic product. And so everything was about, did your GDP go up at the end of the year or did it go down? And then that single number determined the planning for our entire orientation around economy. What we're needing to switch to is changing that purpose to like measuring a more holistic frame of indicators and measures to see how we're succeeding. And this is where the well-being economy, the well-being index comes in. So at a national level, there's a whole bunch of series of things. The same thing needs to happen at the level of the city. When we do our budget, we need to know did our homelessness population increase or decrease? And did it go to our target? Was the amount of people that were using active transportations, bike and walking, did it move closer to our target or decrease? Did our community's greenhouse gas emissions move closer towards our target, or do we move in the wrong direction? Same thing could be with our amount of waste produced, or per capita renewable energy use, or number of representation of women in city committees. If we're not going towards our target at budget time, that tells us if we've had a failed budget or a successful budget, not whether we met sort of like the financial goal of not overspending. And this is the fundamental orientation with donut economics, is to first change that purpose, communicate that, and then organize your organization from that place. So we're still in the process in Nanaimo of developing our indicators. And what happened with us was that we were in a situation where we were also updating our official community plan. So I'm not sure how familiar folks are with official community plan, but it is the central document for land use planning for your city, and it needs to be updated in cities every 10 years or so, and it demarks out sort of the key zoning and land use for the city in terms of where you want your industrial land, park land, residential, and then also key policies on the type of development. So what we're doing is we're setting up a set of indicators saying, you know, these are the targets that we want to reach in 20 years. And then from those targets, we're going to develop a model of different land use planning scenarios and evaluate each of these scenarios based on what our targets are going to be. And that's going to inform, and then we're going to go out to the community that'll choose based on sort of how these different land use planning scenarios go, based on the Doughnut's evaluation of them, whether we're going to choose that as a community or not. So that's a real central part of sort of Nanaimo's process. And you know, one interesting indicator that we're looking at is walkability. So how far away is access to key community amenities like groceries, medical, park land, and we're going to set a target for walkability or access. And so it's interesting to map this out on GIS and then figure out what would be a key strategy to improve the walkability score of your city in each area. And one policy that has been in place that we have been doing for a while that we're going to enhance is compact and complete communities. So using this concept of developing our community around key nodes and corridors where we're going to concentrate development and not have dispersal of subdivisions and sprawl. Within our policies, we're also going to identify other key strategies. So building compact complete will be one set of strategies. We're also looking at a circular economy strategy, because that's one that can hit on the metrics of greenhouse gas emissions that are a global consideration, also on waste generation and the impact on land use and across the world and resources. And we need to figure out a set of strategies that are going to move our indicators in the direction that we'd like to see them go. So this is the beginning of our donut model for Nanaimo, and in the center here will be where our different strategies will reside, and then each of these different areas around air quality, waste, soil and waterway health, climate change, and then with economic health, healthy environment, connected livability, empowered, will all reside these indicators that we'll report back on and targets each year when we're doing our budgetary decisions and different policy work. So what the importance for cities to really adopt this is, one, for the coherence and the ability to, one, communicate out the vision and the goal forward, but also two, to organize your internal structures and your annual business cycles. And some neat things that we've been really looking at is sustainable procurement. And so in the procurement policy of the city, you know, that's a way that you can really influence what type of businesses you know, are present, and your impact on the waste stream. And so we've set a sustainable procurement policy that sets different requirements around the GHGs associated to products, and also the amount of waste and packaging associated to them. We go through the different tools that our city has in terms of the leverage points. Grants, make sure our grants align with the donut, make sure that our different regulatory tools align, make sure our investments and infrastructure align, and then also the messaging that we put out to the community. And so I think, I'm not sure if my time has been tracking, but I think I'm getting close to 15 minutes. I think this gives a good overview of sort of where we're at with the donut, and I'd be happy to take any questions on this.
Ben, thank you very much. And again, I mean, cause for hope right here. And it would be nice to think that Saanich, where I live, and which has adopted the One Planet Saanich project, was to take this next step and start to create a donut-based official plan. I'd love to see the CRD do it too. I don't know where you're going in terms of the district. This is for the city, as I understand it.
Yeah, this is for our city. And, you know, as staff go through this process, there's a lot of things like, oh, this is a real donut policy that we've been doing for a while. And like, you know, here in Nanaimo, we always look to the work that's happening in Saanich and Victoria as examples of some really positive and progressive policies. And I think what the donut does is just allow to like really clearly define your purpose and set up a very systematized way of continually tracking your progress and moving forward to it. So what, you know, I really love the metrics that Saanich has chosen for its environmental work. And I think that's just carrying it forward into the social equity realm as well.
Thank you. Could you release the screen? And we'll take a few minutes for comments or questions. 3 options for you folks. And I see 2 hands up already. So you have a raise hand option under your reactions button at the bottom of the screen, or you can just wave at us if nothing else works. Or you can put a question in the question box. So I've got Claire and Barry and Gary for starters. So I'll take those 3. Claire.
Yeah, I was just wondering, Ben, if you might be able to describe just really briefly how you're going through your review process of the funding programs to align with the donut economics.
Right now, it's like piece by piece, like what our major focus on the donut is really looking at how it is integrating with our official community plan development. And we're putting a lot of our energy in the stages. You know, we've been at it for about 2 months now, is like developing a solid set of indicators and a framework that then we can sort of really go through all our different policies and refine. And so one of the key areas is really for the donuts is really looking at your financing end of things. And for us, I think the first thing that our finance department is going to tackle is how the donuts integrated with our annual budgetary process. And then we'll start aligning our grants. I mean, we do have a lot of grants already that are aligned with the donut. Like we're working on an e-bike grant program, and then there's a whole swath in sort of social grants for a wide variety of different things that address the SDGs. But that is an area that does need refinements of things.
Okay, thank you. And Jill, if you want to respond to any of these questions as they come along, of course, please do. Barry.
Here we are. This question's for Jill. I was excited to see your circular approach to resource use. I'm curious about the ability for the circular treatment of plastic waste. Can it be carried around more than one cycle, or because every time you send that around, you're going to degrade your plastic feed? Does it work? Does it work for more than one time around? As far as you can see?
Yes, that is a great question. We actually helped the province distribute their new recycled plastic manufacturing scale-up program. It was a long name. But essentially, the province actually just invested $5 million into companies that are focusing on PCR manufacturing, so using post-consumer plastics. To answer your question in short, yes, it's possible. We need to change the manufacturing process and things like sorting using new technology. And that's essentially what the province is invested in, because they've realized that. But Certain plastics are definitely harder to recycle. The softer the plastic, and the more malleable it is, the molecule itself doesn't have as many bonds, so it's more challenging to keep reheating and turning into new plastics. Hard plastics, though, you take your average container, such as if you get a clamshell from the grocery store that holds blueberries, that can be upcycled into that exact same process. So quality plastics can be recycled over and over and over again.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll take, I'll just highlight, Gary, I'll come back to you and give you the last question, but I'm just going to highlight two questions that are in the chat box so we don't lose them. So the first was Jim Hesser, a question to Ben about how Nanaimo reached agreement to pursue the donut model. It wasn't voted on, I know that, by the population. It was done through a council vote, and he wanted to know, how was it negotiated?
Great question. So, the donut is sort of an articulation of something that we kind of all need, we need to do, live within the means of the planet and supply the needs for people. We were looking at frameworks to develop and, in discussion in our committees, and came across this one, and the timing to be able to, because we'd gotten a lot of resources allocated for community engagement in the development of our official community plan, it was pretty critical timing to institute the donut as sort of the guiding vision and framework, quite quickly in November. And so we probably, at the council level, moved a little bit quicker in terms of building consensus in our council and understanding on it. And so we voted last December, and it wasn't unanimous, basically because some council members just didn't have enough time to really understand and appreciate, it. But now that it's been adopted and our staff are actively integrating it into our official community plan process, a lot of it is now going out for broader engagement with the public and building understanding and demonstrating how it really is very linked with what we've been doing. Like we've set a vision for our community as being a livable, environmentally sustainable place full of opportunity for everyone. And so this kind of puts a bit more of an framework to operationalize that vision, so that we're doing what we're saying.
Thank you. And the second question I see Jill has actually already responded to in the chat box, and the question was from Susan Morrow. If you can't read the chat box, folks, is your website the best place to find a listing? And Jill has put into the chat box the link to that and to the Project Zero graduates. So check your chat box. Jill, did you want to add anything to that? No.
No. There's a couple of links there to both listings for businesses.
Okay, so then I've got Gary, and then I have Sue Andrews. Sue, you'll get the final question or comment, and then we'll take a break. And before we do that, we'll just talk a bit about the breakout rooms. So Gary.
Cool. Sorry. I just want to say first, thank you to the speakers. When I first found the circular economy or the donut economics, I was really relieved to find that. So I just want to say thank you for presenting this tonight. Also, I looked into it a little bit, and I've wondered, and I've sat and I've contemplated, if you look at the drivers of what, is eroding soil, is shrinking or doing damage to our ecosystems and decreasing insects and stuff on the planet, all the things that we need for, clean air, clean water and stuff. I started wondering, like, how can we live within the boundaries in a city? So I'm just wondering with Ben, my question to Ben is, I'm pretty sure you have a permaculture background. I wonder if you've given thought to like industry, like does the future involve cars? Does it involve, roads and lots of technology and stuff? Or like, how can people in cities get within those boundaries? And I wonder if you've looked into that.
You know what, I am a permaculturalist, and I try to wrap my head on that. And I think that it's an extremely daunting task when we look at all the different aspects of our economy. And I think, like, being strategically, the number one thing that we can do is protect our natural assets, because when we start losing the services that they provide, and, the biggest thing right now is our forests and old growth, but that's hard to get back, and protect that, number one, and then just continually build good metrics of measuring ecosystem and planetary health, and continually have that feedback to adjusting our manufacturing processes. And I think that governments need to be much more aggressive in terms of regulation on industry, and also then providing investment in developing the technologies that we need, because we're not moving at the pace that we need to be moving at all. And I think that it's just, there's going to be a bottleneck. It's just going to be, to what degree is that bottleneck going to be? And cities, I think, can be a big solution, because, you know, we've got to maintain a certain level of population. It's going to be difficult to go back. And so it's figuring out how to do that and minimize our impact. But great question. And I think we just need to build, especially in the next generation, an army of problem solvers that have that awareness of the donut and the need of, that's the purpose that we need to focus our economy around, and then let them loose.
And Jill, did you want to add anything to that?
I appreciate, Ben, that you folk mentioned the natural assets. In my other job, I'm a carbon accountant, and so we really focus on how to meet our climate action targets. And sometimes we see these incredibly complex, technologies that are pulling carbon from the atmosphere and trying to lock it underground, and essentially engineering something that a tree does pretty good job at. And not to throw those technologies under the bus, but I think we don't focus enough on our natural assets. And from a carbon perspective, we look at it as blue, teal, green, or brown. So the brown, of course, is the carbon stored in our soils. The teal, it refers to the wetlands. Blue for marine, and green for our forests. And so those are really the areas we need to be very vigilantly protecting and seeing as key assets. I do worry about the loss of wetlands as well in our communities. So another area of climate action to work on.
And finally, Sue, you're muted.
Hi, and I too would like to thank the speakers. I found both of their presentations enormously positive and hopeful at a time when I think we desperately need that hope. So I'm very grateful for the lift that you've given me tonight. So I thank you both for that. My question is to Ben. We have had a progressive city council who put in a bunch of bike lanes and brought in a number of other really progressive policies. And there's been a huge amount of negative pushback on those activities, which have taken me by surprise. In fact, including Andrew Weaver, who's come out with a great deal of vitriol into why these bike lanes are, and why they shouldn't be there. And it's been such a shock to my system as a climate activist that here we have finally a city that is doing their best to put these really positive things in place. And so my question is, have you had similar issues in Nanaimo, and how have you dealt with them?
Yeah, we definitely sometimes hear that we're a bunch of donut heads. I think that's the critical thing, is that for a city and for municipal government and all governments to really clearly explain and show what the vision and the framework is, and what we're measuring success by, and then clearly demonstrate the policies that we're putting in place to meet those targets that there's agreement that we need to do, and to make that link, and just to keep going back to that link. And it's difficult when you don't have an overarching framework to work within. And so I think that can help us in that process to show that, yeah, bike lanes, we're trying to lower greenhouse gas emissions, and we've demonstrated with this policy, it's been able to shift this amount of people out of the cars, yada, yada, yada. That's helpful. And I think that change, people get used to what they like, and nobody likes when they have to adjust. And so you know, when the bike lane takes up a bit of the car or slows down, you know, traffic, it's inevitable that people will be angry at you. And, you know, it's just so nice to have people that write in to support you, to let you know that keep doing the good work and don't let the negativity get to you. So I appreciate your encouragement and acknowledging that the pushback that, you know, progressive folks do get.
Yeah, I think what we're hearing is a lot of grumpy taxpayers, and there's even an organization called Grumpy Taxpayers, and I have a feeling that it probably should be called Grumpy brackets old men taxpayers, because that's mostly what it seems to be. But anyway, Jill, did you want to add anything before we take a break?
No, I mean, kudos to Ben for, you know, all of the leadership that your council has brought on this front. I think it's really cool to see one of our communities on Vancouver Island literally on the map right now, and all the articles that have come out. What was the article you were most proud of?
You know, the article that I had the biggest laugh was that right during the debate in our council, one of our council members didn't take the time to read the briefing note. We brought it to like 3 different committees, and during the council meeting, he said, "Doughnut economics is anti-GDP, it's anti-business, it's anti-growth." And then right afterwards, I pressed my button and I let him have it. I'm like, you know, this is inaccurate. It's not a reflection that, you know, this is not what the Doughnut economy is about. And I was a little bit harsher than I normally was. And after the comment, you know, the council meeting ended, I went up to him and I was like, "Listen, I'm really sorry about coming harsh, but you know, what you said wasn't accurate. And I guarantee that's going to be the headlines." Well, 2 days later, the Times Magazine, Nanaimo was highlighted as adopting the Doughnut, but it was only his statement that was put in there showing how there's pushback against it. And so, you know what, you just got to keep going for it. And now our staff are so excited. There's been so many people reaching out, and there's always going to be pushback, but people know that this is the right thing and the right focus, and it's inevitable.
Great. Well, thank you very much, both of you. I just, Jim, Ben can probably answer this in 2 seconds. Nanaimo is the district of Nanaimo. How many municipalities make up the district?
So yeah, our regional district is made up of City of Nanaimo, Parksville, Qualicum Beach, and Lanceville. So it's got a population of, you know, just under 200,000, and the City of Nanaimo is 100,000.
There you go. Okay, well, thank you both very much. That was really encouraging, and as you heard, people really appreciated it. So applause all around, or you can use your little button or whatever you want to do to thank our speakers. You're very welcome as speakers to stay in our small groups as we break out into small groups, or I understand if you can't. In breaking out into small groups, Jan Ingalls is there, and Jan, I don't know if you want to say anything, but I'm just going to very quickly share these slides that with some points around small group discussions that you put together for us a few months ago.
No, just go ahead. It looks great. And I think it's just that sense of being aware that our small groups are so vital in terms of the kind of change work we want to do happens in these quality discussions. So thanks.
So there's 4 points there and another 4 points here, just things to think about. So what we're going to do, we are going to randomly assign you. Now, if you're not going to stay, please do let us know, because it's really problematic if we assign 5 people to a group and 4 of them, in fact, aren't staying. So if you're not going to stay for the small group discussions, please let us know through the chat box, or let us know just by saying so might also work, but not all at once and not right now. And we will take about a